Okay, perfect. Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, and it's very nice to see everybody. It's very inspiring to see, to see all of you coming out in the middle of your day, or maybe it's the end of the day or the beginning of the day. I don't know. And I was thinking like what we could discuss or talk about, and I had a thought. So, does anybody in this room like gefilte fish?
Yes.
Yeah? Have you ever caught a gefilte fish? No? Okay, I have asked this question before to some people, and they're trying to think, wait, is it the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean? Until you kind of tell them, you have to really think about it, but you can't actually catch a gefilte fish unless you stick a fork in a jar. That's the only real way to do it, right? But what you can catch, and what is very common, especially amongst us Yidden, is salmon. Okay? So, bagels and lox, it's a very Jewish food. There's something very special and spiritual about it, and something, not everybody likes fish. They don't like the smell or the taste, but there's something about fish that it's just so cool. So I want to share with you something about fish, and I think it will give us shed some light into the days that we're currently in and where we're headed in terms of Shavuos. So the first thing I want to bring to your attention is that, there are two requirements for kosher fish. Any takers? Two requirements for kosher fish. The Torah tells us fins and scales, or scales and fins. Either way you have it. Yeah, correct. Excellent. So the Torah calls it sinapir v'kaskeses. Now, anytime the Torah tells us something, we have to kind of put on our glasses, right? If you're not wearing it, put it on. If you're wearing it, you take it off and put it back on. Either way, you put on your glasses and you kind of look into it and be like, what's the Torah telling me? And what's really here? Every word and pasuk and verse and letter, there's no extra nothing. There's nothing that's extra in the Torah. So the Torah says, you want to have kosher fish, two requirements, fins and scales. It doesn't say fins and scales. It says the Hebrew vernacular, it says sinapir v'kaskeses. So I think it was about 2 weeks, maybe it was 3 weeks ago. I don't know. It was a couple weeks ago. And I was looking and I was examining the Hebrew word for fins, which is sinapir. Question? Yeah. Oh, I thought you were asking a question. Okay, sinapir, fins, right? And I was trying to rearrange the letters, and I'm thinking, we're in the days of Sfiras HaOmer. How many days are there? Well, we count 49, but it's really a count of 50, because it's 50 days from when the Jewish people left Egypt till Matan Torah, till Shavuos. So it's a count of 50 days. So if you look at the word for sinapir, it has the letter nun in there, which nun is a numerical value 50. And then you also have the word samach pei reish and yod, which means to count. So in the word for fins, there's some type of an allusion to counting 50. So I thought maybe it was a coincidence, maybe not. So I did a search. There's a platform called Otzer HaChachma, which has, if you have any books in your house, some people have 10 books. Some people have a coffee table of 3 books. That's all they have. Some people have a Sfarim shelf. Somebody just told me a couple weeks ago, and he said he has 4,000 books in his house. So I have this website. It's called Otzer HaChachma, and it has 150,000 books. So it has a lot. So I did a search. And I found something very interesting. I actually liked that. It was exciting. It helped me, get in the mode. So I did a search, and I found one book, one sefer from one rabbi who lived in the late 1800s, and the sefer is called Ora V'Simcha, and he says that the simani tahara, the symbolism, what makes a fish kosher, has a direct connection to Sfiras HaOmer. He says that Svira, no problem. I like this. It's good. The music. The Torah is compared to a shira, a song, and it's supposed to be given in a way where it's exciting. So anytime if someone's giving a speech or anything and there's music, it's supposed to liven things up and make things exciting. So thank you. So what does he say in this sefer? he says that the 50 days of Svira is alluded to in the word Sinapir, because if you rearrange the letters, it spells Nun, which is 50, and Yisaper, counting 50. But then it gets even better. He says if you take the second siman, the second thing, which is scales, the Hebrew word is kaskeses. So how many days are there in 50 days? Well, obviously there's 50, but how many hours are in those days? So if you do 50 times 24, right? Yeah, if you do 50, no, I'm sorry. If you do 50, let me do the math right here. Got a handy dandy calculator, and we'll get to it. Okay, so let's say you have 50 days and you want to figure out the amount of hours. So you got to times 24, okay? So if you do 50 times 24 hours, that is a total of 1,200 hours. So 50 days total has 1,200 hours, which is the numerical value of kaskeses. So in the Torah's description of what makes a fish kosher, Sinapir vis kaskeses, is an allusion to the counting 50 days of Sfiras Omer, which is 1,200 hours. Pretty amazing, right? So we see there's a direct connection. Now, so we asked, like, what are we going to talk about? Fish, and specifically salmon. I was just watching a video today of a salmon. I even brought a picture of a salmon. So sometimes we only see the final product, and it looks a little bit different, right? This is a real salmon, and this is also a real salmon, right? They're both salmon. One we like. You like this one better? You know who likes this one better? The bears. Right? When the bears are searching, as the fish are spawning and going from the rivers to the ocean,
I've never seen it.
This one's right. This one doesn't swim anymore. Correct.
I've never seen that fish.
This is a salmon, and you know what? And they have a tremendous journey as they're trying to, and most of them end up surviving as they travel through the current, which is an important aspect we're going to focus on. They travel through the current. They climb. They jump. The fish are able to jump over the water, or on top of the water, to be able to see, is there any prey, or any predators rather. They know that the bears are lurking. So this is what happens. It's very common in Alaska. You could see over here, right? The fish literally jump out of the water, and they're able to detect what's on the dry land, what's on the wet land, and they're able to, most of them end up being safe. But, a bear's diet probably consists of a couple, probably a couple dozen or a couple of hundred, maybe even a day, but it's still even a small fraction. Most of the fish survive, and some of them get caught, and we could eat them as salmon. But there's something spiritual about salmon, and there's something important that they do, and that is they're able to swim against the current. The Gemara teaches us in Kedushin. The Gemara in Kedushin tells us that a father is required to teach his child several things. And one of them is Torah, one of them is a trade, because if a parent doesn't teach the child a trade, they'll end up being a robber or something like that. They'll steal. The last requirement on the list in the Gemara, and sometimes being the last is the best, right? We say first is the worst, second is the best, third is the one with the polka dot dress. In Yiddishkeit, it's not the case. Third is usually the best, meaning the last. Say it again? How to swim, exactly. You took it out of my mouth. Very good. The Gemara says, Af shito mayim, right? You got to teach the son how to swim. It's a little bit strange. Torah, okay, it's very important. We understand that teaching them how to, make a trade, make a living is also important. Swimming is interesting because the Torah, if it's just about survival, the Torah could have said we could have said a lot of other things, like teach them how to use a sword or something, right? Teach them how to survive. Why are we highlighting that we should teach them how to swim? And the second question is, who's the one who teaches this? Who is the author of this teaching in the Gemara? The Gemara doesn't say. Gemara says, Yesh Omrim. There are those that say. So, if we think about it, who was a person in Jewish history that really represented this, swimming against the stream? Rav Eliashiv, who was one of the great Gedolei Hadar, he says that when we are required, when the Torah is telling us, or the Gemara is telling us, you have to teach your child how to swim. Thank you very much. When you have to teach them how to swim, it's not talking about just physically swimming. That's also true. You have to teach them how to physically swim to survive. But there's another way to teach them how to swim, and that is to swim specifically, it's called neged hazerem, against the current. That is, you're going to be living in a world where everybody's going to be living one way. You have current events and you have social norms of everyone doing one thing. But as a yid, the Torah tells us, "V'yidgu larov b'karav haaretz." The bracha, the blessing that Yaakov Avinu gave to us, the Jewish people, is to be like fish. That's the blessing. You know, what's our claim to fame? It's not this, it's not that, it's that we're like fish. What? Fish? Because fish have a power that they're able, specifically kosher fish, because they have a backbone and they have fins and they have scales, fins to move and scales to protect. The Lubavitch Rebbe says fins represents ambition and scales represents integrity. And that's really the life focus and lifestyle of a yid, of a Jew, is to live with ambition, to constantly be growing, kind of like what you guys are doing here in this room right now, being in a state of proliferation where you're always seeking new growth, new opportunities to learn, but also ambition. Oh, sorry, that's ambition, and also integrity, where a person has Yirah Shema, where a person's living that they're being honest and that they're being true to themselves. And that's the scales, it represents protection. And a Jew, it's interesting, non-kosher fish, although they exist in rivers, it's not as common. They're more common in like lakes, where you have bodies of water that are still. Because non-kosher fish in general don't have what's called a shidra, a backbone. But kosher fish, a dog tahar, has a backbone, has fins and scales. It's the perfect requirements to be able to move against the current, like we see. They have the perfect body type to be able to jump out of the water to detect, to use the fins to scale, to go places, to move against the current. Most fish that are not kosher, they stick to one place, and wherever they go with the flow and wherever the water takes them, that's where they go. But a kosher fish goes against the current. It goes against the tides. And if there's one person, you could figure a lot of people in Jewish history, but there was one person in particular. His name was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva when I'm talking about one person who represented this trait, to be like a fish who went against the current, who was able to swim. How do we know Rabbi Akiva? Because Rabbi Akiva is the one who at age 40 said, he didn't know even Aleph Beis, and he was afraid though. And he's a normal person, he's a regular person. He was afraid, well, the students are going to make fun of me. The little kids, they're going to laugh at me. So you know what he did? The Medrash Haggadol tells us that his wife had a brilliant idea. He had to do something that was, quote unquote, socially off. He had to do something against the social norm. So what did Rabbi Akiva do? He took a donkey that was laden with a garden on its back. Now, most people, when they bring around a donkey, it doesn't have a garden on its back because it's not a normal thing. But Rabbi Akiva wanted to learn Torah, but he was afraid people would laugh at him. So what did his wife do? She had this brilliant idea. Rabbi Akiva, you're going to learn how to do something that's going against the flow. That's a little bit socially interesting. So what did he do? He took a donkey and brought it into the shuk, the marketplace. And the first day, people laughed at him. You have a donkey that has a garden on it. You're so silly. They would laugh at him. Second day, they laughed at him. But you know what happened on the third day? No one even thought about it. No one laughed at him. That gave Rabbi Akiva the chizuk, the confidence that, okay, people might think things about me or say things about me, but if I know I'm doing the right thing, then that's what I'm going to do. And therefore, that gave him the confidence to then go to the yeshiva, to then go study Torah. The first day, the students laughed at him. The second day, the students also laughed at him. But third day and on, they didn't even think about it. They didn't laugh at him. Sometimes going against the current is what gives a person the strength to be able to withstand whatever it is he's trying to do. And when I say salmon in particular, I really mean salmon. There's a sefer from one of the Hasidic rabbis, the Me'or V'Shemesh. He says that we have a custom. A lot of people eat fish, specifically on Shabbos, and some in particular have the custom to eat salmon, or it's called lox sometimes in Hebrew. But salmon in particular is considered one of the holiest fish. Fish in general don't have eyelids. Their eyes are constantly open. Represents the fact that we have this constant vigilance. We're always on the lookout. We constantly see things. Say it again?
They're smart.
They're very smart. And they have a lot of fins and a lot of scales. They don't just have two fins. They have a lot of fins and a lot of scales. Some people specifically eat salmon because of what it represents. And if you look, we were trying to figure out who was a person that went against the stream. It was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was the one who taught his students. He was the one who learned at the age of 40. So I was able to find that there's the Talmud Yerushalmi in Kedushin, and it brings down the same Gemara that you have to teach a child how to swim, but this time it gives a name. In the regular, there's the Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, and it doesn't say who taught it to us. It just says Yesh Omrim. But if you look in the Jerusalem Talmud, it says who says this. It tells us who taught us this. And you know who it was? It was none other than Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is the one who taught us this lesson that you have to teach a child how to swim. And he's not just teaching a child how to swim, but you're teaching somebody, you're showing that you're able to swim against the current. Rabbi Akiva knew this because it was very personal to him. He was able to swim. He was a person who swam against the current in a life that was all against him, in a life where he was afraid people was going to laugh at him. He was able to stick up for the truth. And it's not a coincidence then either, that Talmud elsewhere tells us that the Jewish people are like fish, just like fish need water to survive, so too the Jewish people need the Torah to survive. And you know who teaches us that teaching? It's none other than Rabbi Akiva as well. That's the Gemara in Brachos 61. And Rabbi Akiva is this person who taught us that you want to be successful in life, you have to be like a fish. You have to have the fins and the scales, the ambition and the integrity, to constantly be looking for growth opportunities, to be able to be like that salmon, that even though, it's interesting, a salmon, who's its predator, at least in these areas? A bear. Why is that interesting? Yosef HaTzadik, who's compared to a fish, right? The blessing of V'yidgu L'Rov B'Karav Haaretz is given to Yosef and his children. So Yosef represents being like a fish. Who was his protagonist? Who was the one who was coming to try to eat him alive? Who was the one who was against him? It was Eshes Potiphar, the wife of Potiphar. The Torah tells us that she was trying to seduce him. But Yosef stuck up his ground. He did something that was socially off. It would have been the normal thing for him to do, to just give in. But what did he do? He said, no, I'm going to do the right thing. He went against the current. And the Rashi tells us that it was the Eshes Potiphar was compared to a bear, a dove. So it's interesting, of all things, she's compared to a bear, and Yosef is compared to a fish, perhaps like a salmon in particular. Some fish might get caught by the bear, and in a person's own life, they might get caught by the bear, whatever that represents. But in life, we have to be like the fish, to go up, to swim against the current, and to be strong, and to have that value system. And when we do so, we're going to be able to, our lives are going to be filled with a lot more meaning and depth. And we'll be able to reach the goal, which is Matan Torah, where we receive the Torah. That is our life force. When we were by the Torah, Hashem lifted up a mountain like above our heads. And what did we say? Hashem said, if you accept the Torah, great. But if not, then Sham tehei kivuraschem. Over there is going to be your burial. That's what he says. So Sham means over there. If a person is living and he's appreciating that what I have, the Torah, is life. The Torah represents chiyas, represents life. So then that's where I am. A fish never wants to go out of the water, because he knows that in the body of water, that is his life. That's the greatest way to survive. And I'll just end with one thing. I figured I brought this prop, I might as well show it. So this is the American flag. Now, America is a great country, and we have to give a lot of thanks and Okar Satov. Now, this has nothing to do with Memorial Day upcoming. I'm showing this to you as a pure mashal, as a beautiful example of what we're describing. So if you ever look at an army uniform, anybody here ever been to Udvar Hazy Museum? Udvar Hazy, it has like the space shuttle. I don't know, they have like different aircraft. Anyways, but if you notice, and now that I bring this up, maybe you'll notice it, on the patch that army personnel wear, specifically in the American Army. So the flag is positioned in the correct way. This is the correct way, correct? Where you have the blue on the top left and the red-white stripes coming down. If you look on the right arm, now maybe you've never noticed this, maybe you have. If you look on the right arm, there's something interesting. It's the opposite. It's backwards. There's a backwards American flag. Now, if you don't believe me, you could look up the space shuttle, the Challenger that went out. I think it was not the Challenger. I think that didn't come back down, right? If you look at the space shuttle that went up to space, if you look on the left side of the space shuttle, it has an American flag in the regular way. If you look on the right side, just like an Army uniform, it has an American flag backwards. Now, it got me thinking, like, they spent millions and millions of dollars on this space shuttle, or they spent hundreds of dollars on the Army personnel uniforms, right? Do you think it was a mistake that they put a backwards American flag? Probably not, right? So I looked into it once, and I found out something that I thought was astonishing. And that is like this. The American flag, when it's positioned in the right way, it's not moving or anything, okay, very nice. But why is it positioned backwards on the right side? That's because when you're moving, what happens to the flag? Right? When you're moving, so then there's a force, there's opposition force, and the flag is positioned backwards, right? You see that? Anytime you move, look at this. You see that? See that? See how automatically the flag goes backwards? See that? It's cool, right? So it's the most realistic depiction of something that's alive. That's why Army personnel wear flags backwards on their arm, because it represents the fact that they're moving into battle, that they're fighting, that they're moving, they're going places. The backwards flag on the space shuttle is the most realistic depiction, because if a space shuttle is moving up, then guess what? The wind is going to bring the flag down, and it's going to appear backwards, right? So the moving backwards, the backwards flag is the most realistic depiction of the American flag. And I think the same is true with us. Is that the fish that swim against the current, the kosher fish, like the salmon, that shows that we're moving places. That shows that we're really alive. When we're doing something that might be socially off. I mean, even think about what's in this room right now, coming and exploring and learning and growth-oriented. It's not if you do it many times, it might feel normal to you, but from the world at large, I mean, people don't do that. People aren't learning. People aren't so much growing like that. They're not so growth oriented as much as perhaps they should be. But we're like the fish, and we have to connect to the fish. We're like that backwards flag. So no matter whatever we do, let's be like the fish, and let us continue to make Hashem proud. Thank you very much for having me. Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Next time I'll have to actually bring some nice fresh salmon. Maybe something that looks like this. Yeah, we could sponsor lunch. It'll be delicious. But at least now we know the story behind the salmon. You know where it came from.
Now you know why they serve it in Africa all the time, right? Because salmon is on Shavuot.
Correct. Yeah, very good. I think it's a beautiful thing. In general, people eat on Shabbos. So specifically, Shavuos would be a beautiful time. Because of what the Torah represents, it's the life force, it's the water, and we want to be like the fish. I think we should do it.
Okay.
Okay? Okay.
We'll go for swimming lessons.
Okay. All right. Nice to see everybody.
Thank you.
Wishing you an amazing rest of your day. Okay.